Welcome to the channel. Now, I am fighting a horrible cold, as you can tell by my voice, but I'm going to try to fight through and get all of these done. For the next week, other than the highlight videos, you're going to be getting the reintroduction into the series. And what I mean by that is All Pro Football 2K8, the FFL, is going to be coming back for our 10th season soon. And we won a championship in Season 9. We saw the off-season. Now I'm going to go through every single division and go through each team, their pros, their cons, their best players, so you guys can be more invested into the series and into these players. Now, let's get started with the Atlantic Central. And here we are. We're going to start off looking at this division. And we're starting with this division because it has three of the oldest teams, I believe, in the Firebirds, the Metal, and the Stallions. And then a slightly older team, but obviously not as old as them, the DC Demons, who were formerly the Redcoats. Now, these teams are very good, and just a few years ago, the Stallions were one of the best offenses in the league. This is the most tough division in the whole league due to the Firebirds being a contender, the Demons being a contender, the Metal being a dynasty, and yes, the Stallions are not great, but it doesn't help that they possibly have 6 losses every season off the bat due to these amazing teams, especially because they're in a rebuild currently. And we're going to start off with the DC Demons. They were established in 1984, and they are the former Redcoats, and they've built a really good team the last 6 to 7 years. Now, formerly they were, for a little bit of time, in the Wolves' old division, but around Season 7, Season 8-ish, actually, no, I think this was way earlier. I think it was around Season 5, Season 4, all the teams got moved around a little bit in their divisions, and they found their way to this one. Now, they've built a really good team, but they are really inconsistent due to them being slightly younger, as you'll see in their depth chart in a little bit. They have a really good defense. It's aging, but if they can make some good picks, they can revitalize this defense. Also, they have a star pocket passing quarterback in Austin Stewart. He's grown from being very inconsistent to very sharp with his passes and his decision making. With amazing ownership and the coaching that this team has, it has what it takes to beat every team in the league and especially top their division every year. But as well, as I said before, they are in the hardest division. Now, if we look their offense, they run a dual tight end single back, which is like what the Flight use and how they use Oliver Strauss. And as you see on defense, there's not many defensive schemes in the league, but Tampa 2 is especially a really popular one with a lot of teams. They have Austin Stewart quarterback being their #1 threat on offense. And on defense, their best player is Carter Cantwell, easily the best one of the best DBs in the league, especially because of his speed. His coverage skills can be a little lackluster, but he is extremely fast. So even if he is beat, he's going to come back and make big plays on the ball. As we look at their depth chart, they have a pretty solid team coming into Season 10. As you see, they have Braden Firecrotch still. He's been a part of this team for many years, 12 plus I would say. They also got Scott at guard, Osborne at tackle, but don't forget, they got Gene Day as a free agent, who's a former All-Pro wide receiver. He's a speedster, so he's going to have, Austin Stewart, I should say, is going to have more help. And don't forget about Malcolm Waters at running back. Now, he's been a little inconsistent, a little touch and go, especially due to injuries. But if there is a hole to be found, he will find it and take it all the way for a touchdown. Uh, Malcolm Waters is a very talented back, and he really is the powerhouse that this team needs to really try to get past some of their other deficiencies. Now, let's look at their defense. If you look, they have Carter Cantwell, like I said, at DB, and he is a very extremely fast CB on that side. And don't forget about Mathis at free safety. Roman Mathis has been on the team for a long time. I believe he was their first pick in the first season of this series. And he's very good at zone coverage, and he's a really big hitter. Now, also don't forget about Matthews at strong safety. He's undervalued, but he's a big hitter as well at 6'4", and he's also from the Discord. Then you look at Anderson on that other side. He is a big press DB that really stops people at the line. They just drafted Favors to be that edge, and he's a very big lineman. And they have Townshed and many others like Rollins, who is undervalued as well and can definitely be one of the best DNs in the league if it wasn't for injuries. Now let's look at last year's divisional winner of this division, and that will be the Firebirds. In Detroit, they were established in 1925, and they're one of the oldest teams in the league. They run a zone run offense, and they also run the Tampa 2. Their best player on offense is Jax Howe, and their best inside linebacker, well, the best defensive player, I should say, is Justin Jones, who is one of the best middle linebackers in the league. Now, if you look at this team, like I said, they're one of the oldest teams in the league, and they had Hall of Famer Kyle Weeman for 20 years and didn't miss a beat. And after becoming a champion, former first-round pick Neve Watts came to Detroit from the Wolves. And they've really built around him and gave him a stable home he needed. They are constantly making a run at a title and up there every year. There is a big problem, though, and that is age. Age, especially on their defense, has been a really big problem for the Firebirds. If you look, they keep losing their best defensive talent, and even though Neve Watts, yes, has become better and better, they really need to focus on defense, or they're really not going to go much farther than losing a title. But now, let's look at their team more in depth and see what they have to offer. In the league, there's a big meta shift to tackles who are big run blockers. Think Marvin Ephraim. And what started that was Jax Howes. He is one of the strongest tackles in the league and one of the hardest run blockers to face on that left side. Also, they have Warford, who's been in there for a long time as well, and he's one of the best guards, if not the best guard in the league. Then they have starter Stewart at wide receiver, who he's been there for many years, back when even Weeman was there, and he's a very special talented receiver. He's a good route runner. Now, the person to really focus on is Marcus Oliver. He's easily one of the best route runners in this league, and he's going to become more like an Ed Council the more he's playing. As we saw in the championship game, the first play for the Firebirds, Neve Watts fired one down the field for Oliver, who ended up being wide open. Oliver can beat just about any DB in coverage. And talking about the quarterback, Neve Watts, he's lowered his interception numbers. He's not nearly as aggressive, but he still has that very powerful arm, and he's still extremely athletic. He can run, as we saw in the championship game. He does it a lot less, but also in that Montana Young offense, he lets his quarterbacks work. He lets them run, he lets them do what they need to do to win the game. Now, Neve Watts, he's in a really good system, and he has former MVP Sherman Hickson at running back. Now, Hickson has aged dramatically. He's lost a lot of his speed, but he's still a 6'3" powerhouse. He can break any tackle if given the right angle. He is really good in this zone run offense. It's going to be really exciting to see what they can do last year in this new league starting in Season 10. So even though they have one of the best middle linebackers in Justin Jones, they do have a big hole at linebacker and free safety. They've lost a lot of their good uh, secondary play with their free safety Escalante. But they do have former first round pick Leonard Cooks, who is good. They have Barry at strong safety, who is a hard hitter but can play decent zone. You have D end Escalante, who's a good pass rusher, and then you have Gatewood at the other end position. They're really missing really star players except for Justin Jones, and he does show up on every play. He makes some big plays for this defense. It's just how far can you really go with one really big star player on a side of a ball? Only the future can tell, and hopefully this team can continue their rising throughout the division. Now let's take a deep look into the Pittsburgh Metal. They are the best team in the league, hands down. Now, they did have a down year last year, but due to them being in the hardest division, it's not surprising. They have the best player, one of the best quarterbacks in the league in Bryce O'Connell. He's clutch. He's a great pocket passer. Now, he lacks athleticism, but he is really good. And they have the best running back slash linebacker in the whole league in Ty Banks from the Discord. They run a 3 wide receiver single back, so they can run the ball with Banks, but they have 3 receivers on the field at all times. And their defense is a hybrid defense. They run a 4-3 blitz that can look like a 3-4 at times, but they also run dime and a lot of blitzes and out of nickel and dime as well. Which is why when the Dragons face the Metal, they always have a hard time because the Dragons like to space out teams, but teams like the Metal are built for that. Now, if you look here, they are the dynasty. They have the most championships in the whole entire league ever, and they're one of the oldest teams established in 1919. They can be inconsistent, but with the top 3 quarterback like Bryce O'Connell in the league, and a running back like Ty Banks, and not even starting to talk about the best defense in the league. Their once young team, now a established veteran presence, is completely scary and very impossible to go against every week. They're almost perfect. They are in the tough division, but they are the team to beat every year. Great talent, great coaching, great history. They are the bar to meet. This team is absolutely insane, and every time we face them, we always have trouble. Now, looking into their team, they do have a slightly different team than most teams, and I will explain why in 1 second. Their coaching has made amazing picks, especially through not just a draft, but undrafted free agency. If we look at their O-line, they have Hackney, Silvera, Pagan, not many, Schultz. Not many of these O-linemen were even drafted in the draft. They were mostly undrafted, and they've just made them good enough to just be, well, good enough. You look at O'Connell, he only has Kafers really as a star receiver talent. He's a really good route runner, though, but he's not extremely athletic. But he does have Banks, he does have, obviously they have Bryce O'Connell. They run the ball, and they use the clock against their whoever they're going against. They are a really good team, and they're built to last, especially if you look at their defense. Now, there's not much to talk about their offense, but their defense is where this team is amazing. They have Palmer at DB. He can play free safety, CB, linebacker. He is fast. He breaks the defense because he's so fast. He's hard hitting. He has decent coverage. He's so tall, so big. He's basically a linebacker playing CB. He's a amazing talent and has great future. You have Malik Cloud on the other side, who is a good zone coverage corner. He's no Emil Reyes, who was a corner for the Metal for many years, but he is good enough. You have free safety Bowman, who's one of the best free safeties in the league. They have Clanton now at strong safety. So they move Emmanuel Tanner Sr. to outside linebacker to pair with Banks, which is scary. They picked up Rashad Ford in the draft. They have Beal and Campbell, and don't forget Christensen, a former All-Pro D tackle. This defense is legit, and in the future, unless they really try to restack this defense, is going to be very scary, especially with Palmer. I would look for him being a very special talent. Now, the Stallions, they have a very interesting team and a very interesting backstory. They are also one of the oldest teams, established in 1919. Their best player on offense, because they're in the middle of a rebuild, is Trevor Foy at center. And their best player on defense is Del McHugh, one of the best D tackles in the league, even though he's aging. They have a power run offense due to their new head coach they got last year in Brady Vaughn, the Hall of Fame running back from the Wolves. He had a fight back with Montana Young back in season 1 and was traded, and now he's made his way all the way to become a coach himself. The Stallions, like I said, in the middle of a rebuild. They got rid of their best players, and the other best players have retired. Now, if we look into the Stallions, they drafted and grew Patrick Anderson and had a killer offense. Their old coach wanted to rebuild, and the ownership said no and fired him. Now Hall of Fame running back Brandon Vaughn became their new head coach, and even though the team is slowly getting better, a nice undrafted upgrade at quarterback, and slowly building a defense, they are building for the future. They are slowly becoming better, and Brady Vaughn is forming this team into a stout team, and only a matter of time the Stallions will be a contender. Now, the ownership didn't want to rebuild, but the old coach had already given up Patrick Anderson. He didn't want Patrick Anderson anymore. He was trying to trade him, but no, he was asking for too much money. Anderson caught wind of it. He was sent into free agency, and the trying to think who picked him. Oh, the Revenge. The Revenge ended up picking up Patrick Anderson, and because even though the team did not want to really go back and do that and do any type of rebuilding, because the coach basically got rid of Patrick Anderson for literally nothing, ownership was forced to go through a rebuild. And so they got rid of their best receivers, the best offense in the league was demolished, and their defense was never that great. So this team has quickly fallen from a mid-tier team to top-tier team to now basically in the bottom of the league. Now, they are slowly getting better already with Brady Vaughn. They're running the ball a lot. When I mean a lot, I mean a lot. They're building an O-line. They're slowly building a defense, especially with Josh Peterman at linebacker. It's going to be very interesting to see where they go from here, especially with the Stallions being such an old team. But first, let's look at their depth chart. As we see here, like I said, the undrafted quarterback was Anthony from the Discord. They picked up Tomlin from free agency. They have Travis Walter, I believe his name is. He's a former tight end. They have Hill at tight end, who's one of the few star tight ends. They have a great guard in Amaya, a good center in Foy, a good backup kind of guard in Christian, and they have Cointilla, I think his name is. Vaughn has also drafted a fast running back in Harris to his offense. Now, this team is, bottom of the league, yes, but Anthony can do good things in college. Well, coming out, he's one of the oldest quarterbacks to come out, and he is clutch. He is a good field general, and we're gonna see if he can make it in the pros. And Harris, he's a speedster, so it's gonna be really nice to see what this team can do. And the nice part is they have Hill at tight end, and they have Walter, who's a former tight end, who is a good receiving tight end, out at receiver, so he's a good blocker as well. So they have 7 blockers at all time, not even counting sometimes when they have a fullback. So they're a really run-heavy team, and now let's look at their defense. Now their defense is not great. I'm not gonna lie, it's not. But they have Cameron at DN on the edge, and they have the 2 Vaughns that they picked up years ago. And don't even forget about Del McHugh at D tackle, who is currently still one of the best D tackles in the league. But because of his age, he's starting to finally digress a lot. They have Jones at CB, who is a very good press corner. They have Johnson they picked up in free agency. They need help at every other secondary position, but again, this team is still kind of building from what was left. And then don't forget about Peterman, who was a project linebacker coming out. He is very agile. He has power. He can pass rush. Basically everything that this 3-4 blitz team needs. Now, they do need linebacker, like middle linebacker. They need 2 of them to have this 3-4 work. But it's just very interesting to see this team quickly build the way they are, and I'm really, really happy how Brady Vaughn has been building this team so far in the I think year that he's been coach. It's in the Pacific South, our old division when we were controlling the Wolves. Now it's changed a little bit, but not too much. We have the LA Monarchs, the Las Vegas Lightning, the Sacramento Wolves, and the Arizona Giants. Now, it's a mix of new and old teams, but let's just jump into the first team to talk about, which is the LA Monarchs. LA has had a very controversial past, especially due to their team having really bad issues with their owner and players just leaving due to not liking him. This team has only made it to the playoffs a couple of times, and they really haven't had much success in the past few years. LA is the 3rd best team in California. Since the Wolves and the Dragons this decade have been great. They've made a great run years ago, but ever since then they have struggled. They have a project player in Dan Dodds, who was drafted, and he's from Patreon, so if you want to join the Patreon, the link will be in the description down below. But also, he is a quarterback and DB. He's better on defense than he is on offense, but he's trying to become better. But this team is having issues trying to gather and rally a team around him. But other than him, they have stayed very stagnant over the years, especially with a great defensive presence like Bradford St. Pierre, but they really haven't built a really good defense in many years. They're looking to make some changes in the future, but are slacking in explosive talents. This team really needs some help with just building a good team around their star players, and they tend to pick up free agents way past when they were actually good. Now let's look at them a little more closely. And they run the power run offense with running back Jose McNeil, which we'll see in 1 second, to try to get the ball out of the hands of their quarterback Dan Dodds, who can be bad at throwing the ball, but he is an athletic talent and can run out of the pocket when he wants. On defense, they run the Tampa 2, and their best edge rusher is former linebacker, now edge specialist Bradford St. Pierre. Years ago, he was the top linebacker in the league, but ever since he's been put at D-end, he's been not as great in a 4-3, but he's definitely still an edge presence that this Monarchs defense does enjoy. Their defense is decent, we'll look into that 1 second, but they were established in 1980 in LA, and they have not left ever since. At one point, they were one of the most popular teams in the league, but ever since their stagnant play and their stagnant team built over the years, it just hasn't been that great. Now let's look at the depth chart. Now, as you see in their offense, they have a good O-line. They have some massive holes at both guard positions, but they have a solid tackle, center, and right tackle. Now they have Rashad Burns and Isaac O'Neal at wide receiver, Burns was a draft pick just a couple years ago, and he is a speedster and is really good and can become a very good talent in the future. They have Dan Dodds at quarterback, who's obviously a good quarterback. They just need some help in making him better at passing the ball. Now, a good part of their team, but also I would say a bad part of their team, is Jose McNeil. McNeil is a good talent, and at one point he was a top 3 running back in the league. And the first year he was with the Monarchs was his last prime year, and he ended up getting injured at the end of that year, and now he's lost a lot of speed. Now, that isn't that big of an issue since he is a power back, but it's hard for him to keep his momentum going after that first tackle that usually he is hit with. And in the past, he was really good at being agile and a power back. So he's lost half his game, and so he's really just a slow, powerful runner, but that does not help this team when they do need help. Now, on defense, they have a star edge rusher in Zach Swenson that they just drafted, and he's got to be coming off that left side, or actually the right side, if you look at them. And then you have Pierre on the other side. Obviously, don't forget Jefferson at D tackle, and in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if they turn this team into a 3-4 and move both edge rushers to linebacker. And then, they have a good middle linebacker, but that's where the best parts go. They have a Project DB in Dan Dodds on that left side, and then on the right side, they have Bryce Holton, a former Wolves Defensive Player of the Year in their old conference. And then last, they got underrated strong safety Will Chase. Now this defense is good, but they still need some big holes filled, and can they fill them? We do not know. Now let's get to the next team, the Lightning. They run a zone run, and their best player is Marquise Butler at wide receiver, one of the best possession/red zone threat wide receivers in the league. And their best defensive player is Hall of Famer Emil Ray's son, Hugo Reyes. He plays at free safety, but can either play at any DB position you can have. They were established in 2010. Now let's learn a little more about them. They've had many owners and many names, and many homes. But they've settled in Vegas, and now with the Lightning, they've been pretty good, especially when they have franchise Chris Young after his stint with Carolina. But since he left, their best players retiring, they've been pretty bad. They even tried Rick Tempest last couple years, and the former Golden Arm did not live up to his name. There is still no dice, and they are stuck with an older way of building teams, which is offense first, and their offense holds most of their talent, but they do have a new franchise quarterback in Fry from the YouTube comments section. They have 2 great tall wide receivers that ran out this offense, and don't forget the defense that has some talent, like I said, Hugo Reyes, and underrated talent stuck on a bad defense, which causes this defense to be not that great and really hard to follow through on some good runs to the playoffs. They run the zone run offense, which is really nice, especially because they do tend to give the ball to their running backs out of the backfield. Like you saw with Herman for many years. Herman led the league in receptions and yards for a long time, but he has now, I believe, retired and or just really old, so he's not really that much of a great talent anymore. And then on defense, they run a hybrid defense like the Dragons run, where they blitz a lot from the 4-3. And now let's look at the Lightning, and as they have Adam Noble and Butler both at receivers. They're both really tall at 6'5". Butler is bigger though, and he is awesome, and I wouldn't be surprised if he is a bigger talent in the near future. Herman has not retired just yet. He's almost a backup quality running back though. He's still good at catching out of the backfield, but he's not great. Ernest at tackle hasn't been as great as he was in the past, but he's still a solid left tackle, and they have a solid guard and center. And then that really sets up Fry to have a really good blocking for him and to try to throw deep to Butler and Noble like he should. Tempest did show off that he could throw deep to these good wide receivers, and I wouldn't be surprised if that can continue with Fry and his amazing arm. But as you see, a lot of their best players are on offense, which is good, but also bad because that's how the league used to be, and now it's really about trying to build that defense up first and try to have a balanced team as possible, but that just isn't happening with this team for some reason. Now, they did need a new quarterback, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try focusing on defense in the near future, hopefully next year's draft and or free agency, due to a lot of people being opened up into free agency and trades the next few years. Now, let's look at the defense. Now, on defense, they have some underrated talents, like I said before, like linebacker Novak, and the other linebacker as well. They have a good middle linebacker. They have Oaks and Strand off the edge. Don't forget about Claypool at defensive back and strong safety Byram as well. But the problem is their defense just has too many holes and just can't stop the run or really protect against the pass or even get much pass rush. So even though you have an all-pro free safety, a good strong safety, an all-pro middle linebacker, and decent pass rushers, you're not going to get a lot of big stops, which means your offense really has to show up. And this team, their offense is good, but it's more of the receivers just bail out deep every play. They're going to have to try to build this team up defensively to really try to counteract the Wolves or even the Monarchs. But only time will tell, and let's get into our next team. The Wolves have had a very interesting history, and as you see now, they run the shotgun offense and the hybrid defense. Their best player on offense is their center, Don Turk, and then their best player on defense is middle linebacker, Denny Parr. Now, Wolves are a very weird case, especially for the fact that we used to control them, so we have a little more insight on the team, especially with how the beginning of the franchise of this series, the Wolves got a new owner, which was the old owner's son, and what Wolves like to do was they would stack up on a really good team and then let everyone go and just try to draft a whole bunch, get a really good team again, go on a run, and then get rid of everyone again. And they were doing that. Well, then the new owner came in, promised Montana Young that things would be better, and they were for a little bit. They even spent money on free agents for the first time, and they won a championship. And then ever since then, slowly but surely, the ownership has taken more and more of a role in building the team, and in some cases ruining it, to the point where Montana Young staked his stint with the Wolves just to get some new free agents in the mix, and it caused him to end up losing his job. And now, as you look, the ownership is getting everything they want. They have their hometown hero quarterback. They have some good players at receiver and a decent defense. But the team is, even though it's cheap, isn't that great. And now let's look a little bit more into the Wolves. The Wolves are coasting on their old success with Montana Young and their players like Don Turk, that became an all-pro center. Denny Parr, who became an all-pro middle linebacker. Marion Ray, who became an all-pro strong safety. So on and so forth. They constantly let go of the best talent since they are so cheap, and it's obviously so sad that at some point soon this team will fall really hard and find its way into the dumps again. And especially because they are looking to try to make the playoffs one more time this season before they blow everything up and try to restart with some new players around Evan McCarthy. Now let's look at their depth chart. The best O-lineman is obviously Turk. He's the best player on their offense, and they have a good tackle in Cousins, who was drafted years ago, but never really, he was the last offensive tackle, or offensive line player, I should say, taken for the Wolves. They have a great receiving core in Clintrix King, Smith, Teddy Moon, and Eric Trout. Smith is a tall, and he can go up and get some really good balls. He's an underrated route runner. And then Clinchix King, he's an amazing route runner. Maybe a little overrated, but he is awesome at that left side. Don't forget Trout in the slot, or even Teddy Moon, even at his advanced age. An older Stan Main, who's good at tight end. They have running back Mike Clark, who they have kept over the years. And don't forget backup quarterback Jonathan O'Connell. He came in season 5 as an undrafted free agent. He's bounced around the league ever since, and he's wounded back up with the Wolves, which is very interesting. But McCarthy is getting the start, and he is showing some progress in the offseason, and he's showing that he could be a better quarterback. Now, his problem is he needs his accuracy to be better and make a lot better decisions. And honestly, if he was paired with Montana Young in the Dragons, he probably would be a great quarterback. Now we look at their defense. It's fallen from grace a little bit. With some underrated D linemen still, like the D tackles that Montana Young grew, but they're getting older. You have Tuller, who's been there for 10 plus years, who's finally getting a chance, and he's becoming good. You have Denny Parr and the linebackers that were traded for about 6 or 7 years ago. They need a change. You have Marion Ray, who's wasting away at strong safety. You have a good free safety that they picked up. And then they have Rainey, who's been there for 10 plus years, now finally starting. And don't forget, All-Pro CB Andrew Zempel from the Discord. Now, all of this shows that the Wolves need some help, and I think that's what they're going to probably do, is if they have a bad season, they're probably going to restart, and honestly, to rebuild sooner rather than later is probably a better choice for this Wolves team. Now, if they have a good season, I think that might be the worst case scenario, because they're basing it on luck, because the Monarchs going to need a change. You know, the Giants are probably going to get better. The Lightning are going to get better. So if they do well this season, that might be really bad for their future. But we're just going to have to see how they do in Season 10 of the series. Now let's look at the Giants. The Giants are in the middle of turning from Arizona, moving to Texas. So this will be their last year in Arizona. They run the zone offense. So they try to throw to their running back, which is good, and try to run their running back a lot. And they run the 3-4 defense. Their best player on offense is Audric Normandy at tackle, and their best player on defense is Jeffrey Byram, who after years of being not that great and fighting injuries, he's finally getting good. But now let's look more into the Giants. In the midst of this ownership battle and the possible move to Texas, they have struggled. Their QB is busting due to some off-the-field issues, and we'll look into him here shortly. The only 3 bright spots on the team are running back Adrian Jackson, who's an amazing power back. He lacks elite speed, but he can still outrun people. He can juke people out, and he has good ball carrier vision, but his strength is what he's known for the most. He's almost impossible to tackle. Wide receiver Casey Griffin, he can secretly be the best route runner in the league and make some amazing catches. And finally, Jeffrey Byram on defense, who's finally getting his consistency problems together and maybe trying to make a run at one of the best DBs in the league. But what he's getting known for is not even just the way he's playing, but his big mouth is really starting to get him a big name in this league. They lack a lot of talent compared to the rest of the league, and needing to make sure not to lose the talent they do have, which is scary, especially due to the fact they are moving. And after that move, with the new ownership, they might be losing some key players that they have right now. And now let's look at their depth chart. Like I said, their best player on offense is Audric Normandy, and don't forget their new center in Bobbitt, who's a good center and a good run blocker. They got Carnitas on that left side, who's been there for 10 plus years, and then on the right side you have Casey Griffin, who's a special wide receiver talent, who's really young, and he could be the next Josh Capers for the Metal, where he just comes in, he plays for 10, possibly 20 years, and is solid throughout. You have backup running back Childress, who's been there forever. And then you have Adrian Jackson, who's a awesome talent. Now let's look at their quarterback, Drew Lowry. He was one of the best quarterbacks in his draft class. He's one of the best quarterbacks in college, and he's completely failed so far in this league. He's not good with accuracy. He's not good. He doesn't work hard for what he needs to do. And honestly, I think he just needs some help off the field because I don't think anyone is leading him to a good direction. Especially with having these good receiving threats and good blocking, they do need more help. Now, their defense is where they lack. Now, they still have Easton, but Easton has come out and said that this will be his last year, and Byram is starting to sound like he is getting more confidence and shutting down his side of the ball. But if you look at the rest of the team, they have the worst defense in the league. They have some of the worst defensive players. They've been there for so long, they're not even past their prime. They're at the end of their career and literally just trying to sludge on for money. Now, in the future, I do see that the new ownership, once they get control, will probably build their defense first. But it's going to be very interesting to see what they do, especially with this team having lackluster talent on both sides of the ball. Story that the Bullheads can tell. Now, they run the spread single back offense, and their best player on offense is wide receiver Ed Council. He is the number one wide receiver in the league. And then on defense, they run a lot of 4-3 hybrid 3-4 defenses like the Dragons. And they have Filberto Fajaro, who's one of the best 3-4 DNs in the league. They were established in 1990, and the height of the college near there being really good. And the Bullheads are ferocious, especially on offense, but they do fall behind a lot of other teams, and let's look into why. The Bullheads are a what-if story. Years ago, the Giants won a championship, and their quarterback Al Frills decided to go, see ya, I want some money, and he left and went to Miami, where they overpaid him to this day, where he's still the number one paid quarterback, even though there are tons of quarterbacks better than him. Now, they are a what-if story. Like I said, they grabbed the championship-winning young quarterback Al Frills, and they went hard on offense. Like I said, they already had Ed Council, they already had some great offensive talent, and they also had a good defense with Roberto Fajaro. And the longer they went, the less talent they ended up having on defense due to their offense being so expensive. This made this team stagnant and unable to beat teams like the Metal. And the worst part about it is they kept making runs to try to make to the championship, and just I think a year or two ago, they had a Cinderella season like the Dragons, where they went 11-4. They made it to the playoffs. They were about to make the championship game, and they ended up getting blown out. Anyway, though, even though they have had a top 10 quarterback and a top 5 wide receiver with a revolving door of amazing running backs, they couldn't move forward. Then, like I said, Season 8 happened. Everything went their way. The basic defense, they had a top D lineman like Roberto Fajaro, who started to make some pressure, and the Bullhead offense could not be stopped. Al Frills was at the top of his game, but they lost in the playoffs, and ever since they've had a losing record. And soon, if this team doesn't turn it around, they might blow up the team completely. And then last year, Al Frills was good, but he looked unmotivated. And the Bullheads really need a change of philosophy, especially for the fact that they have the best wide receiver in the league, who is really close with the quarterback, Al Frills. They have a good running back right now in Hunter Salamander. They have, great offensive talent and a great offensive-minded coach, but they really need to start building their team like other teams have built them, like the Revenge, like other teams like that, who end up getting a quarterback last, and instead they've let their defense get worse and worse and worse and wasted talent on both sides of the ball. If you look at their offense, they have a good tackle, they have a good center, but then they have some massive holes at both guard positions and at tackle. You look at their receiving core, it's absolutely absurd. They have Darnell, who's a speedster. He's been in the league forever, and he's a good wide receiver. They have Ed Council, who's the best possession go-to guy wide receiver in the league, and in my opinion, he is the best wide receiver in the league. They have Wilburn Sosa, one of the best underrated route runners in the league, who made a name with the Stallions and the Walleyes. He is getting up there in age. He's never been the fastest, and he's lost even more speed, but he's good. They even picked up Hunter Salamander, who's one of the best receiving backs in the league. Like, this team is unstoppable, you would think, on offense. But let's look at their defense, and that's where it fails. Al Frills is an amazing quarterback, but the problem is when you have a defense like this, that's where you go wrong. Now they have a great D-line, especially with Fajaro and other ones. As you see, a good D-line. They have no linebackers, though. They have as bad as a linebacking core as the Giants. Their DBs, like Hong, who's way past his prime. He had one good year, which is the year that they almost made the playoffs years ago. He has not been good. And then you look at they have a good free safety, and obviously they have a good CB in Mills, who is untested, but he's going to be good, at least. But this team needs help. You know, they have a good quarterback, but that quarterback cannot be put in positions that this defense puts them in. You know, they made one playoff run back in Season 8. It did not go well. And then they, I believe, went on a championship run years ago when they first built this team with Al Frills, but ever since they've been nothing. Now let's look at the team that they constantly failed to beat, which is the Carolina Crusaders. They're a newer team. They started off with Kid Franchise at quarterback. They're the ones that drafted him. And they used him and abused him, and now he's been gone for years. And they have Rashawn Derricks, who's a way better quarterback than he ever could be, especially when it comes to accuracy. And he's not an offensive playmaker like Young was, but he's an actually good quarterback. He's also from the Discord. You look at Benjamin Hampton, who is also drafted by the Crusaders. They have a problem with holding defensive talent down, but they do run the hybrid 4-3 like the Dragons do. They run shotgun like the Dragons used to as well. You know, this is a copycat type league, but the Crusaders are really good, and they really try to make it like the Bullheads do. But I would say they even have a better offense, and let's look into the Crusaders a little bit more. Now, when they had Young, they were always in the top 5, and he got injured, and it looked like he may never be the same, so they let him go to the Lightning. And they use their great offense and have Rashawn Derricks. A big issue with the team is they built their offense, they have little to no defensive talent, and every time they build their defense, like in the first year they picked up Tyson Garrison, he's going to be gone soon, or is gone. I think he is gone. You know, they can't score points consistently. And what I mean is, they can score points consistently. They're a good offense, but they can't score 40 or 50 points every time they're out there. Especially because their seasons are always disappointing. They're always going 8-8, 7-9, sometimes 10-6. They're never making the playoffs, especially with the Bullheads always kind of being around there. The Revenge always being near the top. You know, the Warhogs stealing some wins here and there. It's really hard. And the Crusaders need an average defense, but with their offense getting older, they need to make some moves soon. Because their offensive line, who was a young, stout O-line with Chris Young, is now, even though they have the best guard in the league in Grimsey, it's kind of fallen apart, and let me show you why. As you can see, they have a really good offense. Like I said, with Grimsey, a good tackle, 2 good tackles, good guards, good centers. But one of the best receiver, Mims, is fallen off. Thomas has fallen off. You look at, finally, Tampa Moss, who was a good selection years ago, is 10 years in, and now, like, he's good, but no one ever talks about him. He's never in the top 10. Derricks is always near the top 10. I think one of the seasons he had 43 touchdowns with 10 picks. Like, he's insane. They have two great running backs in Morris, who people thought was kind of weird they were picking him up, especially because it was the same year they picked up Calvin McWilliams, who's a great speed threat. But Morris is the future of the league at running back. He needs a little more polish. He needs to be better at ball security, but he breaks tackles. He's an amazing threat, especially at being number 4. He's a great running back. But this offense is getting older, but you look at this defense, and it's just not that great. You have Crawford, who's eh. You have, the guy on the other side who's eh. You have Hampton, who's amazing at free safety. You have bad linebackers except for Morrison, who's constantly leading the league in tackles, but other than that, he doesn't really do much. They lost Garrison. They have a replacement in Calhoun, who is great. He's great. He's tall, he's very lean, he's speedy, but he's not stopping the run. They have an iffy D tackle like in the middle, and this team just really needs some help. It just seems like every time they draft someone on defense, they just don't take anyone else for a very long time. So I don't know. They're going to need some help soon, especially at linebacker. But let's look at the next team, which is the Warhawks. They are a struggling organization. They were established in 2010. They're very new. They run the heavy zone run, and what that means is it's like the flight almost, where they're going to try to have 2 tight ends on the field, less receivers, but the receivers on the field are going to be a little more speedy to make up for it. Their best player on offense is Alfonso Smart, who is one of the best, if not the best center in the league, and their best defensive player is some no-name linebacker named Blake Brooking, who came into the league literally not known, and he got drafted, and he's become a special talent, leading the league in tackles almost every year, having some of the most picks for a linebacker. He's good at zone, he's tall, he's athletic, he's very good in this Tampa 2 defense that they run. Now, let's look more into the Warhogs. They are a struggling organization who only became really good a few years ago, due to an array of free agent signings like Warren Tanka and Brady Vaughn at running back. But ever since after they left, they've been building through the draft, but they have with little to no results. They got a smart but busting offense and a below average defense. They keep struggling winning games. They try to pick up players that are best available, but they're trying to grow too many project players at once, and the team can be great. It's just they need better coaching and better ways to build their team up through everything. Let's look at their team a little more specifically. They have their old wide receiver, Pariah, on the left side, and they have Dudley Bobo on the right side. They're both extremely fast receivers, especially Bobo, and they have a good guard and good center, and a brand new rookie tackle who looks to be really good and can build throughout the years. They have a project quarterback in Woodley from the Discord. He is a great quarterback with good arm talent and a good mind, but the problem is in pressure he just isn't that great. And then they have an especially fast running back in James, and he is one of the fastest players in the league, like Houston Witt was. So you would think they would try to build off of that, especially in this heavy zone run type offense. But the problem is they just fall very short due to bad decision making and just bad gameplay in general. And what doesn't help is their defense. They have Bryant on the left side, and they have Brock Crane, who was a former Wolves D tackle who was built by Montana Young, in the middle of their defense. The problem is he's a lot older now and has lost a lot of his push. They have Blake Brooking at linebacker, but then you look and they really don't have anyone else super special on their defense. They really need some help, especially because the free agents they've brought in have not been great. And they haven't really drafted well on defense since Brooking either. So what they really need to do is really make this coaching staff better and really make these players better. But so far, not so good, and I really don't see them getting much better anytime soon. Now let's look at the last team of the video, the Revenge. They're one of the oldest teams, established in 1920, and they run the heavy run offense, where it's not just zone run. They run up the middle. They run, and run. With Rich O'Brien, especially at his age, they try to run up the middle as much as possible. And the even crazier part about this offense is the fact that they have the best quarterback in the league, who's also the best player on offense, in Patrick Anderson. And on defense, they have Zeke Freeman, one of the best defensive playmakers in the league. But with Anderson, what's crazy is the fact that they could throw every play. He's an amazing quarterback, but they do run the ball so much, they really savor him. Now let's look more into the Revenge. This team has done an amazing turnaround. They were at the bottom with a busting quarterback, and now they took their defense over and over in the draft, and they saw what the Wolves have done and the Meadow have done. They even stole big defensive upgrades like Zeke Freeman and others. And even with a bad quarterback, they got all the way to the championship game and lost to the Wolves. But since they got Patrick Anderson, the best quarterback in the league, the problem is their D-line has aged dramatically even in this few couple years, and they're going to need to upgrade that group soon. This team is the blueprint for the league, since they've been building defense for so long, and it is so stout. As you look at their offense, they have Salinas and Haley still at receiver. They're not great. They're average to below average. They have Oliveira and Terrell at tackles, both amazing tackles. They have O'Toole at center, and at tight end they have former All-Pro tight end O'Shea, who's probably the best tight end in the league. They also have, like I said, best quarterback in the league, Patrick Anderson, and they have Rich O'Brien, who has two roles in this team as an offensive coach and as their star running back, and he's been leading the league in rushing for many years now in a row, and it's due because of this team running the ball so much. It keeps it away from these bad receivers. They give it to O'Shea, make him block, they make him catch, they make him do whatever they need him to do. They have Anderson, who is one of the smartest quarterbacks in the league, that plays even better with the ball out of his hands as much as they do. So it's very interesting to see how this team runs. And you look at their defense. They've now moved Gerwin, who is an all-pro CB, who's kind of aged out now, to strong safety. They brought up their slot CB to the left side. They're probably going to replace that next season. They have Thomas at right CB, who's an amazing coverage ball-hawking CB in Jacob Thomas. They moved their former strong safety, Hugo Franco, into outside linebacker. They have a good middle linebacker. They got Lunsford at outside linebacker. They have Greg Brick, who is past his prime but still very good. They have Castaneda at D-tackle, who is again past his prime but very good. And they have Drake on that right side. Now, they're going to probably make this team even better through the free agents and just trying to pick people up, because they're really able to really sell this amazing 3-4 blitz scheme that they do have. And now let's look at the conclusion. Now we're at the end here. In conclusion, the Atlantic South is a really interesting division, especially with the Bullheads, Crusaders, the Warhogs, and the Revenge, all having the best parts being completely opposite or completely like each other. Now, it's obvious that the Revenge are probably going to be top in this division, but you can never count out the Crusaders and the Bullheads, and you can't even count out the Warhogs to steal a couple wins here and there. Now, a lot of these teams are older teams, especially if you look at the Blackbirds and the Walleyes. There were two of the original teams way back in the day. And also, as you see, we're going to have three teams again, who are really good, with one team that's kind of having a hard time dealing with the changes that are in the league. But to get started, let's talk about the Chicago Tigers. Most teams are running what this team is running on offense and on defense, and that's the zone run, offense with the Tampa 2 defense. They have the perfect quarterback for their offense in Electric Johnson. He is a star quarterback who's rising through the ranks as one of the best offensive playmakers in the league with a pretty solid arm. And at D tackle, they have a young, big pass rusher in Darnell Houston, who does lack in size and in the run coverage game, but in the pass rush, he is absolutely perfect with that leverage of his. And to go a little bit deeper, they were established in 1940, but they have gone through many name changes, but they finally have come back to the Chicago Tigers. They have a franchise quarterback, and he was touted as the next franchise like Chris Young, but he has a way better arm than Young ever had, and he's on the way to be one of the most popular players in the league. Sadly, they have a rebuilding defense, yes, with Harden and Overstreet as their pass rushing phenoms, but other than that, they don't really. The rest of their defense has aged out really badly. And as well, in the past draft, as you saw, they picked up Lawrence Hackney, who is a star running back in the making. So this team's on the come up, and I wouldn't be surprised if they made some big moves in the near future. Now let's look at their depth chart a little closely. Like I said, they have Electric Johnson at quarterback, who is rising very quickly, which is very surprising due to the fact that Nate Porter was in the same draft class, and yes, Nate Porter has won a championship, but Electric Johnson is quietly becoming the next star quarterback in this league. They have Lawrence Hackney already starting. They have an okay O-line with some big holes, especially at guard and at left tackle. They have former Wolves, probably future Wolves Hall of Famer Davon Kenny at wide receiver. But other than that, they lack a lot of star power on that offense. So if they can make some moves in the future, this team would be very stout on offense, especially with how their defense has been the past few years. Chicago is on their way to come up, especially with Mansfield at DB. Now he's aging out very quickly. He used to be the best DB in the league. Also, Brett Hildreth was in the top 5 at one point, but they're both starting to age out very quickly. They both have a good the Tigers have a good free safety and strong safety. They have the former Wolves linebacking core that they traded for years ago that are very old. And like I said, their D-line's really good with Overstreet and Houston, but they're going to need some more star players on defense, because if not, this team won't go much farther than they already have. And they are in a very defensive-heavy division. So they're going to need to fix that defense quickly so they can actually get something done. But now, let's look at one of their rivals in the Milwaukee Blackbirds. The Blackbirds are one of the oldest teams in the league. Their best player in offense is Jaquan Oregon, who came in as an overrated speed threat in the draft, and he's slowly becoming one of the best deep threats in the league. And then on defense, they have a 20-year vet in Murray Callaway at free safety, and he looks like he hasn't aged a bit. He's still the best free safety in the league, in my opinion. They run the zone block offense just like the Tigers, and on defense, they run the 3-4 blitz, which they just recently changed to, just to try to be a little bit different than the rest of the teams. Now, to look at them a little bit more, they are an aging but great defense. Just a few years ago, their defense was in their prime, but now their D-line is starting to age out a little bit. And they do have a underrated but explosive offense with a great but aging Chris the Franchise Young. In a division with great defenses, the Blackbirds may be the top. They have to be careful with losing all their talent they have had for years. They're an old team who had very few championships, and they have wasted their elite defenses every time. And that's exactly what they did here so far, it looks like. Because the one time they made it to the championship game, they didn't have a quarterback, and now they do have a quarterback, but it's an aging quarterback. So let's look a little bit more deeply into their depth chart. Like I said, they have Jaquan Oregon and Chris Young. And yes, Chris Young is still pretty good from when he was with the Wolves. But here with the Blackbirds, he's showing a lot of his speed regressing very quickly. But he can still throw it deep to Oregon. And don't forget Schaefer on that other side, who the first game we ever faced him was absolutely unstoppable. They also just drafted a speedster at running back in Williams, who sadly they were looking for Lawrence Hackney, but Hackney did not fall to them. They fell to the Tigers, their main rival. They have a bad offensive line that needs a lot of help, but luckily they do have a aggressive quarterback like Chris Young who can get out of the pocket when he wants to. But with his speed and possibly his injury history, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't last long with the Blackbirds. Now, their defense is where they shine. They have King, Carey, Havo at the right side. And then on the left side, they have Frank McBride, who's a defensive playmaker. He's not good at coverage, but he was a wide receiver in college who turned into DB. Like I said, they have Callaway. They have moved their star edge rusher to linebacker in Myron the Thing Draven. They have Johnny Draven, his brother, on the other side. They have two good middle linebackers, and they have a decent D-line that hasn't aged out as bad as the Tigers' defense. So they are trying to make another run, and I want to see if they can do it. But they're going to have to try to get some wins against this next team, who is starting to draft pretty well the last couple years, and that is the team up in Seattle, the Sailors. The Seattle Sailors, they run the West Coast offense and the Tampa 2 defense. They are a part of the old guard who were good for so many years, especially with Rick Tempest. Now, though, they're running with rookie quarterback Lynn Campbell, who is a amazing, smart quarterback. He's a little bit older than the other rookie quarterbacks, but amazing in the pocket and an amazing brain for this offense. And for the defense, their best player is KJ Williams. He was a low-ranked speed linebacker who is coming out to be one of the best zone coverage linebackers in the league. And to get a little closer to him, Seattle, ever since the Golden Arm, Rick Tempest, ever since his luster has gone, they've had a solid team, but have had aging issues, especially at quarterback. But now, with a good coach team with a new quarterback in Lynn Campbell, he lacks a great arm, but what a great pocket passer. They're finally rebuilding, and they're making moves to remake this team and move away from the Tempest era, who they've been stuck in for years. They are a team who is buying, and many teams will be selling by the end of this year. It's going to be interesting to see if Seattle can sail into this new era. And now let's look into their depth chart. And as we see here, they have the aging Robinson at the left wide receiver spot. And on the other side, they have the bust in Michael Ingram, who's supposed to be the next big speed threat down the field with height and be amazing. But he couldn't quite get past the problem, which is he has no hands and he has no route running. They have a good running back system with Gear and an aging Hadley. Also, they just picked up in free agency another big tackle. So they have Ainsworth and they have Huang, who was with the Warthogs. And don't forget their center and Baum. So so far they're making some good moves on offense, but they're gonna have to move away from some of these players like Hadley and Gear that Tempest had. Same thing with Robinson, and try to make their team into their own. And on defense, they have Heath Talbert, they have Butterfield, and they have Haran at strong safety. And then at linebacker, they have Jess Strain, the former best middle linebacker in the league, and KJ Williams, who is starting to become one of the best coverage linebackers in the league. Don't forget about Bonds at D end. He is an amazing edge threat on that left side. And also don't forget about Messick, who is a underrated D tackle. And then on that right side, they have Butler, who, his brother is one of the top wide receivers in the league, and at 6'10", you would think he'd be an amazing edge threat, but he really needs some help. He seems like he's lost a lot of his speed and agility, especially at his size, which is what made him special. The Sailors are a troubling team, but they're trying to start to rebuild, which they haven't done in many years. And now to look at the last team of this video, the Walleyes, who were established in 1919. They were one of the oldest teams in the league, and their best player on offense is Perry Polak. He is somehow the best wide receiver in the league with the biggest mouth. He beats everyone with his route running, his speed, his height, his catching. He is almost a perfect wide receiver. He fell in the draft to the Walleyes, and he is probably the best pick the Walleyes have picked up in many years. They run the 3 wide receiver single back offense, which means they pass a lot. So it's going to be nice to have Perry Polak. And on defense, they have the aging Abe April, the Chicago legend who's been for the Walleyes for many years, and they run the hybrid defense. So they try to blitz Abe April, they try to blitz their linebacking core. It's basically the Dragons defense where they blitz a lot out of the 4-3 and try to mix up a 3-4. But let's get into more of the team. They are a team wasting away at the seams. They have a powerful quarterback and a star wide receiver. They have let everyone else go, and they are going to need to change, or they will be what the Giants are, which are just a struggling team that no one wants to see. They are an older team and never won a championship. They always come short, and they have come short into keeping their stars as well. Can they rebuild, or will they lose everything? They have Terrence Thomas at quarterback, who is the cannon. He has the strongest arm in the whole entire league. But an amazing defense that they did have, they've let all their stars go except for Abe April. They even got rid of Donnell Childress to the Dragons, and they just haven't been able to rebuild this team whatsoever. And it sounds like here in a couple years, Terrence Thomas might be in free agency because his number might be called. So, what is going to happen to this team? They're going to need to build a defense sooner rather than later, because if not, they're just going to be a Cinderella team every year that can possibly be good if their offense clicks, but if not, what's going to happen? But for right now, let's look at their depth chart and see what type of team they truly are. As you see here, they have Houston Witt at running back, who is a Wolves star. He came in as an Olympic sprinter, just like Jordan James, but no one wanted him in the draft. And he came out, and he's been killing it ever since. He's lost a couple steps, but he's still faster than most defenses in the league. Terrence Thomas at quarterback, who's fallen down a couple pegs due to his lack of accuracy, but he says he's going to try to work on it in the next couple years. They have an amazing wide receiver, just a good wide receiving core in general. They have a good O-line as well, especially to try to run with Houston Witt. It's going to be very interesting to see how they do this next season with the lack of star players they do have. But Perry Polak is someone not to look down upon due to the fact that he is the sole reason why this offense clicks. Now, he may not get all the targets, but he does get a lot of attention off a lot of the other players. Now we're looking at one of the worst defenses in the league. Years ago, they had one of the best rushing cores in the league, but now they have basically no one. They used to have one of the best linebacking cores in the league, but again, they have 2 underrated linebackers, but that's about it. And then finally, you have Abe April up there, who's starting to age a lot and show his age, losing a lot of his coverage ability and his speed. So they really need some help on this defense, especially to try to beat out the Sailors or the Tigers or the Blackbirds. The Walleyes are probably the worst team in this division. But with that, let's look at the conclusion. So here we are with the conclusion of this video. The Pacific North is probably an underrated division. It's tough because you have a great coach, Sailors, you have a very hard to beat Blackbirds, and you have an up and coming Tigers. And with right cards, the Walleyes can beat just about anyone with their quarterback wide receiver duo. So the question is can all these teams get better and have a chance? Only time will tell. We're gonna start off with the New Jersey Hawks. They run the heavy zone run that the Flight use, and they run the Dragons defense with the hybrid defense where they blitz a lot and they run a lot of 3-4 and 4-3. Their best player in offense is the new rookie Daniel Turner, who's a playmaker at wide receiver, and their best defensive player is Vaughn Bruce, who's one of the best coverage linebackers in the league, even though he has less than average size and less than average speed. He is definitely a threat on defense. Now let's look a little deeper into the team. The New Jersey Hawks are overshadowed by the Guardians in New York. They have Mike Fine, the former rookie quarterback for the Flight, then for the Dragons, and now for the Hawks. He hasn't had a real shot until New Jersey traded for him. They are building a good offense around him, especially their O-line. With rookie star receiver Turner, they are looking to pick up a good O-line like the Sailors did for Tempest back in the day. They also have an underrated linebacking core with one of the best in Vaughn Bruce. They're being more aggressive like the Dragons and the Wolves have done. They want to be better than the Guardians. Will it work? Only time will tell, especially due to the fact that they are a team that is buying as well. And like I said, in Season 11, before Season 11 starts, there's going to be a massive trade spree and just free agent spree as well, due to some of these teams overpaying their players for so long, especially due to the Montana Young rule that was passed just a couple years ago. But now let's look at their depth chart. For right now, they have 48 at left tackle, Oliveira at guard, Russo at center. What a good left side and center of the line. They just need some help on the right side. They have Daniel Turner and Hale both at receiver, which is pretty decent. And they have Mike Fine and Chris Brink at running back, who they're going to need to make some changes for running back, I believe, especially because Mike Fine cannot run. He is a pocket passer through and through. He's not athletic whatsoever, but he does have a good arm, and this offense is looking to try to be the Flight of the East, where they can run the ball heavily, have good receivers, have a good pocket passer at quarterback. It's very interesting to see what they're doing here and what the future will hold with the Hawks, if they'll sell a lot of stuff off, a lot of their future to try to have a good team. But now let's look at their defense, which they have a good linebacking core in McIntyre, Bruce, and Weathers, all at linebacker, and they run a lot of 4-3, so that's all they really need. The problem is they still have Old Man Clement. They have just a really bad secondary, especially with Rodney Bull up there. They have Yamamoto still at D-tackle and Oaks, but they're going to need some changes, especially due to the Guardians having a really good defense in comparison to the rest of these teams. So can the Hawks become the next Guardians? Only time will tell, but New Jersey is setting up their team very well for the future. And let's now look at Philadelphia with the Condors. The Condors have a power run scheme that they've been running for years. This team they came into the league and were instantly a top 5 team. But the past couple years, the only thing they've really done is be a Cinderella team for 1 year, where they somehow barely made the playoffs, got all the way to the divisional round, and then lost. But ever since then, they really needed some help. They run the 3-4 defense, which makes sense because they have the biggest defensive player in the whole league, and Donnie Perry at D tackle. He's close to 500 pounds and is one of the strongest players in the league. They also have center Jack Herring, who is a star rookie center who's going to make this offensive line instantly better. But now let's look a little deeper at Philadelphia. Philadelphia is an underpowered team that as of late are trying to grow into a powerhouse and make some moves. They've won a championship way back in the day, but in the modern era, they are struggling badly to keep up with these other teams, especially their interstate rival, the Pittsburgh Metal. The past few years, they are growing their defense very slowly, like the Wolves have shown works, and they have a solid quarterback in Dominic Bailey. They have a good future and can build more and more through the series. Now let's look into their depth chart and have a closer look at their team construction. They have Kevin Woods from the Blackbirds now starting at running back. He's aged a lot, but he still can be good, but he doesn't have many years left. They have Fred Montoya at wide receiver, who is a underrated deep threat. They have Torres also at wide receiver. And like I said, if you look at that center, they have Jack Herring, and they're going to try to build this offensive line more. And you look at Dominic Bailey, he is a pocket passer who doesn't have an amazing arm. He really doesn't have an amazing mind either, but he is a solid quarterback. Now, for them to become better, I wouldn't be surprised if they went out and tried trading for a new quarterback. But for right now, Bailey is a pretty good option, especially because he doesn't turn the ball over that much. So they're trying to play keep away with the other teams that they're facing. But now let's look at their defense. About 6 years ago, they picked up Donnie Perry in the draft, and he is a big D tackle, and he picks up a lot of space in that D line. Now, just recently, they moved back to a 3-4, and they picked up Tyson Garrison from the Crusaders, and he's running off that edge. They also picked up Torin Black, who was a outside linebacker, but now they have him inside, and he's playing amazing. Also, they picked up Barron, who is good at coverage and is fast enough off that edge to rush the passer. They also picked up free safety Lewis Harris, who is a awesome zone coverage, playmaking free safety. Now, he does lack the elite speed that other playmaking free safeties have, but this team is just starting to become really good, and all they really need to fix is that secondary. Will they? We'll have to see. But now, let's travel to New York and look at the Guardians. They were established in 1970. Their best player on offense is quarterback, future Hall of Famer Ryan Humes. He was a star for the Gladiators for many years, and he traveled here due to their better defense, and it shows. They've been up there ever since Kyle Weeman left. Ryan Humes has picked up the reins and ran with it. It's pretty impressive to see where they are now. And on defense, they run the hybrid defense, like I said, like the Dragons do, where they blitz a lot. And their best player is Christopher Snell, who in the past couple years has blown up as possibly the best strong safety in the league due to his elite zone coverage. But first, let's look a little more into the Guardians. This team was inspired by the Metal to pick up Kyle Weeman, and they gave their defense a good offense. When he retired, they got Ryan Humes, the same year as Anderson went to the Revenge. Now this team is older, but their coach is good at getting what they need when they need it. Humes is a future Hall of Famer, so this team has a great future, and they sure do. Let's look at their depth chart. They have Brown and Danny Johnson at wide receiver. Both speed threats, both good at deep route running, and both good at catching. Brown might be traded in the future if he doesn't really do much, but they have a good O-line in Benjamin and Barclay. Barclay can play tackle if needed, but they have a good, especially in the middle of their defense, they have a good O-line to probably battle against Donnie Perry. You look at Ryan Humes, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and they have an aging Jaquez, who was one of the fastest running backs in the league, but just recently has lost a step. But he's very, very agile and elusive and hard to tackle. Now, Jaquez is used to running a lot, and that's why they got him, because they want to have a punishing type offense with this power run system. And if you look at their defense, it's a little overrated. People used to say it was the best defense in the league. I personally don't think so, but they just picked up a great CB in Sutherland. He fell all the way to the end of the draft, and here he is. He's going to be a star DB on that side with Paris on the other. They have Snell and Hallman. They have Thompson Terry, who is a underrated middle linebacker who could do pretty well. They have pass rushers in Povosky and Buckner at D tackle. Overall, this defense is pretty solid, especially if you look at the Hawks, Condors, and Cavalry. This is the best defense in the division, and they're always a top 5 team, and we see why. They have one of the best constructed teams in the league with a perfect amount of speed and defense and offense. But now let's look at the Boston Cavalry, who were also established in 1970, and their best player right now is quarterback Connor Grimm, who is an underrated star quarterback. He's very afraid of the pass rush, but he can come up when you need it. They run the shotgun offense, so they try to pass the ball a lot, and they run the Tampa 2 defense. Their best their best player on defense is sadly only Will Stokes. They do not have a good defense whatsoever, so the former Wolves 20-year vet is starting at free safety for the Cavalry. Now, to jump into their team a little more, Boston is stuck in no man's land. They are too bad to be in the top of the league, and they're too good to get a good draft pick. They got a franchise quarterback in Connor Grimm and good receiving talents like a possible future Hall of Famer Hilton Caskey. They are stuck with a bad defense. They do not know how to draft a defense, since they've needed one in the last 8 years and still can't draft very well. They have a shot to change it around. They need to do it soon, or they might need to restart everything, and that is truly the truth. This team has been struggling for many years to really try to make a move, and they've just been stuck right outside the playoff picture. If you look at the team, they have one of the best left tackles in Thomas, but it sounds like they're trying to shop him next year. They have Calvin Ware, who's a good possession receiver, and don't even forget about Hilton Caskey, who was formerly the best wide receiver in the league. Now, he isn't anymore due to his age, but he could catch just about any ball that's around him. Connor Grimm is solid, and don't forget about Peterson. Peterson is a punishing power back, who you would think out of the shotgun would not be a good fit, but he truly is. He has handled the ball a lot in this offense, which is shocking, especially for a shotgun offense, but he takes the ball and probably will be a silver player very soon, if not a gold player, just due to this offense being so good. They are stuck in the old way of thinking that they need to have a really powerful offense. That's where a lot of their star talent lies. You look on defense, they have old Maxey at DB, they have you and Stokes is the best player on this defense. They have Moran at linebacker, who is rising in the ranks as a good linebacker, but he's going to need some help. They have 2 decent D tackles, but they need some help there. And they have Rashad Gevin, a Wolves powerhouse who has really fallen off, and I think it's because he's lost a lot of his speed at his older age. And they have DN Jensen at that other spot. It's going to be very weird to see what they do here, especially on defense, if they can make some bigger moves to help out this team make any type of run at a championship. Now, let's look at the conclusion of this division. The Atlantic North is a very good spot, I would say, with the Hawks becoming better, the Condors becoming better, the Guardians becoming better. But the problem is the Boston Cavalry kind of set them back. But they're very interesting. So let's see if any of these teams can make the playoffs in the near future, and let's see what they can do. Welcome back to the divisional series on the channel, and this is the one we've been looking forward to. In the 6th and final division, we're looking at the Pacific Central. It's the division that our team, the San Francisco Dragons, are in. And let's look at the teams real quick. We have, like I said, the San Francisco Dragons, the St. Louis Gladiators, the Ohio Hogs, and the Denver Flight. All 4 teams have had very up and down seasons ever since the beginning of this series. The Dragons, until Montana Young took over at coach, were a fledgling 10-6 team every year. The Gladiators, for the longest time, had one of the best offenses in the league, who has now kind of fallen off. The Hogs is the first team to be taken control of by a Discord member, and the Denver Flight are our main divisional rivals, who give us the hardest games every season. So first, let's start off with the Denver Flight. The Flight are one of the newest teams in the league, being established in 2005, and their offense is the heavy zone run that's being very influential throughout the whole entire league. About a quarter to almost a half of the teams run this heavy zone run offense, and they run the Tampa 2 defense, which is also ran by the Metal, who made that very influential for the whole league as well. And talking about the Metal, their best player on defense is former All-Pro DB from the Metal, Wes McNeil, who is still the best at the position in the whole league. He is an island on his side of defense, and on offense, they have the amazing running back in Oliver Strauss. He runs this heavy zone run very well. He's really good at the counter plays that come out of it, and he is a very special talent. Now let's look into the Flight a little more deeply. They have never been a bad team since they've came out in 2005, but they've always been stuck at 500. The original years with Miles Carbone, who they picked up in the draft, he is now the backup to the past Dragons starter, Cameron Scalone. Now, in the future, it's rumored that he may leave and just retire, since he is an older quarterback in this league. But for right now, Cameron Scalone is the starter, and he is getting old as well, but he's still in the top 10 at quarterback. They've made some amazing pickups on defense, like underrated former Dragon Sherman Thompson and 5-time number 1 DB Wes McNeil. Offense, they still got Scalone, former MVP Oliver Strauss. A big need is their O-line, especially with the Hogs having a top 15 D-line, and the Dragons have the best D-line in the league. They'll need a better blocking for their quarterback as well to compete with the Dragons. Can they keep up this playoff streak, or will the Dragons swallow up the division whole and the Flight have nothing to do with it? Now, let's look at their depth chart, which has some interesting moves I think that would be nice to see. They have a lackluster O-line, and their receiving core is pretty bad. It used to be pretty good with Carl at wide receiver, But they do have Everett Kirkland at tight end, who might be leaving in next year's free agency, but we're not sure just yet. Like I said, they have an aging Oliver Strauss, who still is one of the best zone run running backs probably to ever play, and Cameron Scallone being still one of the best pocket passers to ever play. But their offense, which used to be a strength, is now almost over-relying on their quarterback and their running back. In my opinion, they need to pick up at least a tackle in next year's draft or something to really get a star on this offense, especially due to their two best offensive players being so old and declining every year. Their defense is spectacular. It used to be one of the worst defenses in the league, but they have a linebacker in Tiny Smith. He's only 5'9" and should probably play safety, but at linebacker he is amazing in this Tampa 2, especially when he comes out and just plays absolutely amazing man coverage. They have Sherman Thompson, who was with the Dragons for many years and was traded to here, and he is absolutely amazing. They also have Wes McNeil, who they've picked up as well. Now, they do have lackluster safety play, but that is helped by their amazing linebackers, with Tiny Smith and their middle linebacker as well. And then their D-line is decent, with Merrill, Mary, and some other players, and they do have a young D-tackle, but they still need help on this D-line. But they do give the Dragons a lot of hell 2 times a year, possibly 3 times a year if they mean the playoffs. But now, let's look at the next team. The St. Louis Gladiators, who are one of the oldest teams in the league, established in 1920, one of the original ones. They run the West Coast offense due to their new head coach, Rick Tempest, who is also the new starting quarterback. And the defense, of course, is the Tampa 2. Their best player on offense is J.J. Jackson, who is a young, amazing route runner who can make some amazing plays in traffic. And their best defensive player is Justin Proctor, who is a project safety who's becoming better and better every year with that amazing speed at safety. Now let's look a little further into the Gladiators. They are a former powerhouse in the league. They are one of the oldest teams and sadly in a downward spiral. They lost their star quarterback Ryan Humes, and his replacement is an awful bust. So bad that the former Lightning quarterback and former Seattle legend Rick Tempest has become their new head coach and has forced us away to start at quarterback. With no defense, they have to be perfect on offense every drive, and they just can't be with this bad roster construction. Changes are needed. And talking about the roster construction, let's look at their depth chart. And here we are with their depth chart. They have 2 of the best wide receivers in the league in J.J. Jackson and McMahon on the other side. Now they have a young running back they just drafted with a backup quarterback as well who should be starting, but Dante McCurley has shown that even though he can make good throws, he has enough throw power to get the ball to receivers, and they do have an amazing guard and a decent center. They really have a really bad O-line. Now, they do have one of the few best tight ends in the league, who is a vertical threat in Xavier Zander. But other than him, their offense is pretty lackluster due to them being very inconsistent. Now, they should have used Dante McCurley almost like how the Dragons used Nate Porter last year, but they just can't seem to make it work. But luckily with the West Coast, they can give the ball to the running back. And now we look at their defense, which really hurts their offense with really old DBs who've been in the league for many years. They have a close to retiring free safety, and other than him, he's probably the best free safety in Mays, or best safety I should say, where Proctor is probably their best player due to his speed. And they do have a nice DN and Stank, but other than that, their team is pretty bad, and they're gonna need to really upgrade this this defense and really help out their offense to really try to make any type of play against the Dragons, who last year won the championship, and who are gonna be looking at next. But with the Gladiators, especially with their new coach and new quarterback, Rick Tempest, we're going to really need to see how they will do, because Rick Tempest does not like playing on teams with bad defenses. He understands that you need to at least have a solid defense to win. But now, let's look at San Francisco at our user team. And here we are with San Francisco. We user this team. We used to be with the Sacramento Wolves, but now we're with the San Francisco Dragons. That happened in Season 8, and we're going into Season 10 after this video comes out. Here they run the zone run offense, and we run the cover 3 defense. Not many teams use the cover 3 defense, and it's a haphazard cover 3 defense. Our base defense is cover 3, but we mostly use the hybrid system where we blitz McCarthy or blitz Farmer off that edge. Our best player in offense is Mauricio Shepard, who's a star wide receiver. He has bad ball security issues, but our best player in defense could be almost at any position, but we have the best pass rusher in the league in Brandon Dorsey. He is a platinum player with amazing strength, speed, pass rushing skills. He could stop the run. He is a perfect D end. Now let's get a little more into the Dragons. The Dragons are a newer team in the league, but ever since they came in, they have been a good team, and the fan base expect playoff runs every year. They have always had a franchise quarterback, but due to the fans ran the last coach out of 15 years to run to Sacramento, due to him trading all their aging talents and trying to rebuild without going to their owner first. They were stuck 8-8 and 10-6 for many years. When they would make the playoffs with no running game, it would hurt them severely. So when Montana Young, who got booted from Sacramento, came to San Francisco, he made the Wolves into a special team, but he came in here with no talent and went 3-13 with their new franchise quarterback in Mike Fine. But in the second year, if you follow this last season, they got a star quarterback, Nate Porter, out of a 3-team trade due to his injuries, and he fought through some serious ones during the season to bring the Dragons a championship. Montana Young had a hard time with the Wolves' ownership, so with the Dragons, they gave him power overall, the whole team, to make any decisions he wants, to make the moves he needs and however much money he needs. And now they want to repeat. They will have a hard time due to their injuries at quarterback, so they'll have to put the pressure on their undrafted quarterback, J.C. Riley, who has to impress through practice and in games. But no one knows how he will play since there's so little tape on him. As we look at the team, now quarterbacks are a little inflated due to the fact that if you have a scrambling fast quarterback like J.C. Riley, he's going to look the same exact way as Nate Porter. Now Nate Porter may be able to come in late in the season, but for most of the season, we're going to have to rely on J.C. Riley, who all we know has a really big arm, and he's only 5'6". That's it. And he mostly played running back when he played. We still have Angel Akins, and we have another undrafted player due to Brandon Cusco retiring last second, our backup running back. And we picked up Rich Lawrence as well, who is a undrafted power back who ran a lot in college. So we really don't know what we'll get with him to see if he will stay healthy or not. We still have Mauricio Shepard. We still have Welker. We still have Billy Williams, who is a do-it-all player. And we still have Hunt. It's a very interesting offense who ran basically a Cinderella-type team last year. But can they repeat and show that they deserve to be one of the top teams in the league? and they're coming into the season #1 due to their win in the championship. Now let's look at the defense. And their defense is stacked. We have Foster at DB, who's one of the best CBs in the league. He lacks the elite agility and he lacks the elite speed, but he's the best coverage corner in the league. We lost Ezekiel Freeman in free agency, and we picked up Ash Garnett from the Discord as our free safety. We're going to rely on Guzman, who is a 20-year vet at strong safety, and we still have another 20-year vet in our second CB as well, who we're going to have to rely on. But the other parts of this defense are fire. We have Nick McCarthy, who can play safety, D-end, linebacker. He's a do-it-all type of player and can make some big plays. We also have, like I said earlier, Brandon Dorsey on one side, and we have an aging but still amazing Donnell Childress, who has been one of the best pass rusher specialists in the whole entire league. And don't forget how Montana Young can make these D tackles play way above how good they actually are. But with that, let's look at what the last team in the division in the Ohio Hogs. They run the zone run offense and the 3-4 blitz on defense. They were established in 1924 as one of the first expansion teams in the whole league. Their best player on offense is Richie Hung from the Discord. He's a quarterback with ego issues, but he has a lot of talent behind that arm. He just really needs to get his head right and get the games going. And their best player on defense is probably one of the best strong safeties in the whole league in Lyle Hayward. The problem with him is he's aging and starting to really lose his coverage ability due to loss of speed. But let's get a little more into the Hogs. They are an older team and won a championship in the last decade due to picking up some amazing free agents. But ever since then, they have slowly lost all of their talent, and they have been rebuilding since. They got their new owner and coach, and he's been making big moves with a great young quarterback in Richie Hung, an amazing wide receiver in Boitono, who you're going to see in a sec. Then he's also building a stout defense behind that. They are slowly improving every year, and since the Wolves showing the new blueprint of starting with defense, more and more teams are following that path. There isn't a lot of defensive talent, so when some come up in the free agency and in the draft, they are picked up quick. The Hogs are in the come up, and they have some time to really try to build this stout defense up, especially because a lot of teams in this division, like the Dragons and Flight, do have such a stout defense. Now let's look at their depth chart. So like I said, they have Richie Hung, they have Freeman Chili still, he's one of the oldest wide receivers in the league, and they have Bryson Boitono. He is an elite speed threat talent that you'll see especially in this coming season. He's really come up a little more since the past. But other than him, they really don't have a lot of big talent on offense. They really went out and got the quarterback and wide receiver first, and ever since then they've been working on defense. So let's look at that defense next. They picked up Carl Banks in the draft this past offseason, and even though he hasn't played a single snap, he's already one of the best linebackers in the league. Now, he lacks a lot of speed and zone coverage, but he is an amazing run stuffer, which is going to be nice due to the Flight and the Dragons running the ball so much due to the lack of quarterback. They have a great linebacker in J.C. Jacobs and Anderson for this 3-4 blitz. They have a decent D-line and some special talents they've picked up over the past couple years. And don't even forget Lyle Hayward. This team is on the come up, and they really just need a couple extra pieces on defense, and I think they can really make a run in this tough division. Now let's look at the conclusion of the video. Here at the end of the video, I want to conclude this divisional wrap up just saying that thank you guys for watching these videos. I'm really excited to get Season 10 on the way, and I wanted to introduce every single team in the league and see if you guys want to join. If you want to join as a player, put your name in the comments down below, and put your name, your position, your number, and just tell me what type of player you are. Also, you can do it through the Discord, and if you want to help support the channel, leave a like and subscribe. Also, there's a Patreon link in the description down below. And if you do a Patreon, if you do it that way, you will automatically get a player. There's no having to wait in between to see when you'll get one. You will automatically get one. Also, just thank you guys for watching. If you want to also help control a team during their off seasons, go to my Discord and I'll let you choose between some teams. Also, if you want to take full control of a team, names of teams and stuff, and help me make their jerseys, go to the Patreon, and that is one of the levels. Now, finally, I'll see you guys next time with the start of Season 10, our biggest season yet. And I'll see you guys then. Peace.